To think that how you grew up, seeing money, experiencing money, success, material items, careers, all the things that were spoken, all the things that were inferred, all the things that were read between the lines or the eye rolls, the nuances that we can all think that kids aren't picking up, but we all know we picked up lots of things that our parents, our caregivers had no idea about. So to think that all of that doesn't have a direct impact on your relationship with money today as an adult would be absolute insanity. And I have many, many, many ways of proving to you that this is the case. And the great news is that once you can see it, we can start working on shifting that imprint. This is part two on how your childhood money imprint is impacting you financially today. This is the scarcity imprint. You don't have to listen to these in any particular order, but you do need to listen to all four parts in this series for you to really be able to identify where you fit among these four types. These are not based on necessarily how much money you had or what income class you were in or what job titles your parents had. This is about the energy and relationship to money. So I'm going to start with an example so that this really lands with you because this is important stuff. It's taken me 5 years to do this podcast series. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your abundance, your relationships, and everything in between. We are at part two of my special revolutionary 5 years in the making podcast series, How Your Childhood Money Imprint is Impacting You Financially Today. Part two is the scarcity imprint. I need to start with some disclaimers because I know how quickly your brain can go to, well, I'm sure I have the scarcity imprint because I grew up poor, or I grew up with a mom who was working 3 jobs and we were always up against it. These various imprints are not tied to how much money your family had or the professions that you had. It's the relationship to money. It's the energetic alignment and misalignment to money. It's the vibe around money. It's much more nuanced than this, which is why I knew I needed to do this study over 5 years with people from all over the world, different races, different religions, different backgrounds, different traumas, different professions, different family dynamics to really nail down how many imprints there are. And so far, we have 4 imprints that I feel really solid about. I just don't want you to base them around household income, what class you're in. Okay. It's so much deeper than that. And let me give you an example from my own life. Okay. You're not going to hear from me. I'm not a motivational speaker that's like, I had to sleep in my car or I was homeless as a kid and now I'm a multimillionaire. It's just not my story. Okay. My story is one of craziness. If you're familiar with me, if you're pretty new to me and you're coming to me because someone referred the series to you, welcome to the shit show over here and the wildness that we do and the abundance zone because we get to be all the things. We do not have to be mentally sound and have our shit together to make a lot of money. My father, by all conventional standards, was well off and successful. Okay. Now, you wouldn't have thought that if you saw him because this man did not prioritize, let's just say, clothing as an important factor. And he had like holes in his pants and his socks and shit. And my dad was a cheap ass and he made great money, but I would go to New York City with him every summer. It was like one of these trips we would take to see his mother, my grandmother. And it was one of the few times I ever was able to have any overnights with my dad growing up. My parents were divorced when I was 4. And so when I was with him, I was already trained to be hyper vigilant, being raised by a narcissist in a highly abusive household. So I naturally was observing everything, monitoring everything all the time. But additionally, I was also studying everything because I got so little time with my dad. And it's like I kind of wanted to know more about him. And this man was a man of few words. He was a major introvert for sure, an avoidant attachment style, and just really shy. And so I didn't verbally get a lot of information out of him. So I had to study him. And when I was a little kid, there were still payphones in New York City. There's probably are still payphones in New York City in some places. I kind of wouldn't mind there being some payphones now. It's kind of a vibe, right? So my dad would stick his finger, those of you who remember them, in the coin slot, where sometimes when you were on a call and if you didn't use all the change, it would spit out whatever was left, like your remaining balance. And my dad would stick his finger in them. And in New York City and in big cities, there could be a phone bank of like 10 phones. And that could happen like every other block. And we would do a lot of walking and he would constantly do it. And when that man found a damn quarter, you would have thought he won the lottery. He would be like giddy with delight. So there were lots of things with him that I picked up around money that I could even do a 5-part series just on that alone, because there's confusion, right? Like he drove a Lexus, like a fully loaded, nice new Lexus. And that's when Lexuses were like hip hop to the scene and new. Okay. He also had an antique Jaguar. He had like this amazing, he had lots of collections, but like high end collectibles of things, a beautiful home. But on the other hand, when he would go to tip at a restaurant, and because I was so hyper vigilant, because what kid in the world looks at this shit? But my mom was also training me to look at it because she would always say, I divorced your father because he's a cheapskate. I mean, she was definitely bashed him constantly, which doesn't surprise those of you who are familiar with narcissists. And so, of course, it created a natural pattern in me to look for confirmation bias evidence that my dad is a cheapskate. But I mean, I got to give my mom this. I mean, my dad actually was a cheapskate. I mean, truth. Okay. But he was also a wonderful man. She leaves, that part out. And we went out to dinner a lot. My dad's a foodie, loved dining out. I loved going. And the bill would come, and my dad would do the mathematical equation, like actual math, like long form math, to give 15% to the penny. Even restaurants where they knew his name, he frequented amazing waiters, and I was horrified. And my mom even gave me cash when I would be with my dad. I think I was with my dad on like Tuesday nights. And when I would go to New York with him, she actually gave me cash. And I kind of give her credit for it, but it was still a really weird situation to be in as a kid, where if my dad was tipping that low or wasn't tipping like the taxi drivers, she said she was concerned for my safety, which of course scared me, and that I was too, and my dad wasn't looking, leave additional cash on the table or tip the taxi driver. Now, you can imagine a 9-year-old fucking girl having to have that responsibility of doing that and make sure my dad didn't see me, and my mom planting the seed that she was concerned for my safety because of how cheap my dad was and how he didn't tip. So there you see the mixed bag there and how it gets complicated. But we were considered upper class, not even upper middle, like straight up upper class. So it's not about how much money is in the bank. It's one's relationship to money and all of these dynamics and things that are said and things that weren't said and how you interpreted them. Because what's interesting, and I need to do an episode on this, and it'd be really great to have, and feel free to email us if you and a sibling of yours are open to talking about it. Because if you have a sibling and they have a very different experience, and I've coached a lot of people like this, where they're the sibling that is always up against it, isn't making money, struggling, working so hard, blah, blah, blah. And then they have a sibling that's like the rich one that's always cash flush and has their shit together. But they grew up in the same exact household in the same exact dynamic. Well, why does that happen? It's because of how we interpret those nuances, those situations. And we also can't forget that in a lot of dysfunctional families, okay, and even in families that aren't, abusive, that's why I like the term dysfunctional. It's not necessarily abusive, but there's dysfunction and also society standards, right? You might have a brother who has a different relationship with money as a result of growing up in that household because boys were treated differently. There were different expectations. They were even treated differently at school and, et cetera, et cetera. So there could be that point as well. I want to give another example, and then I'm going to get into the scarcity stuff, is that I'm going to use an example of a client I've had a couple years ago because it really sticks out. And she has 3 sons, and they were all raised in the same household. And the youngest one is super financially responsible, on it, has always been on it, like went like the solid, reliable career path, very low risk, but very, doesn't overspend. And then there is the middle one, total disaster, still was living at home, couldn't get him out of the home, and he's like 30, okay? That's not good. And then the oldest one was like erratic spending, which if I were to type, give the imprints of the 3, each of them have a different imprint, which is fascinating coming from the same household. And what's more fascinating is it's all 3 boys. So I wanted to give this example too, because it's not just male, female. And clearly I'm not a therapist, but after 20 years of therapy and hundreds of thousands of dollars of healing work, I mean, I do know a few things, okay? And studying people and coaching people, but it's a curious dynamic of, is it because there's the oldest and the middle and the youngest? Because we know there's personas there. Do the birth charts play a role in these nuances as well? Their experiences at school and how they were perceived at school. So there's so much that goes into it. But the bottom line is the financial imprint, the money imprint of each of them is so clear. And because none of her kids have yet unpacked it, it's going to continue to impact them until they unpack this imprint. And the same goes for you. Nothing is going to change if nothing changes. These episodes are here for you as a starting point. And then I want to invite you, once you've done this starting point and it's like, I know I need to do something about this. I do not want to be living out this imprint forever. I get it now. I want to be able to shift this. The next place for you to go is my Make More, Work Less Money course, period, end of story. It is a self-paced program. You get unlimited lifetime access to it. It is meant to do over and over again, and you'll want to. I think we have 4 or 5 modules. I can't remember. And it comes with a 70-page guided workbook. It's designed to actually be fun on top of being highly therapeutic. And it is made so that you can transform your money story in 7 days or less. So this doesn't need to be, oh, I've been living this way for decades. It's going to take me decades to unpack it. No, it does not, unless you believe it's going to have to take decades. It's like, once you are aware of something, haven't you ever been given direction somewhere and you've been taking this other route for years and someone goes, didn't you know that you could take this road and make a right here and it's a major shortcut? And you're like, oh my God, I never had an idea. And it like saves you 10 minutes every time. And it's like earth shattering to you. It gets to be that fast once you start having some of the puzzle pieces that have been missing for you. You get to end up seeing the whole picture. So don't make up a story that this has to be some long, arduous thing. It doesn't have to be. But if you are starting to think that, or if that's something you commonly think of, to heal this stuff, to work on this stuff, this is going to be so hard. Well, my guess is that you do have a scarcity imprint. And that is one of the first things, one of the first symptoms is that everything is hard. It's got to be hard to make money. It's going to be hard to have success. It's going to be hard to make money doing what I want. It's going to be hard for me to work on these things, change these things, heal these things, learning this skill, finding someone to help me. Everything is hard. Everything is a struggle. And even if it's not, somehow it ends up being a struggle for you. And then you see other people where things come easily for them. It doesn't seem so hard for them. And then you're envious. It's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why is it so hard for me? And it becomes an identity. The struggle becomes a thing, right? You can even end up having other people around you that support that struggle. You know, it's like the struggling artist, the broke actor kind of theory, right? The healing community has a lot of that. It's like, well, we don't make that much as healers. You know, it's always such a struggle. And that scarcity imprint, you're getting it from there. It's like that was the relationship with success and money and riches and wealth and comfort and freedom is it's a struggle. It's hard. You know, this world is hard. You know, this is always going to be a lot of work. You've got to work so hard. And then you end up creating that in your own life. Okay, another thing around the scarcity imprint when we're looking at the symptoms, there's a fear of spending. If you were constantly told that money was tight, like we don't have the money, we can't afford it, and spending was this like pie in the sky luxury, you might now find it hard to spend money even when you have enough. So you can have money, and this was me. You can have money and have plenty of it and even know you have it, but then have a fear of even spending that money. So then you end up depriving yourself of necessary or even beneficial things because of the ingrained fear of financial instability that's tied to childhood. Thankfully, I have an incredible business manager who I've grown to greatly trust, kind of like a father figure. And he said over and over, there was a nickname for me at my CPA firm, Chipmunk. And he was just blown away at I just kept, you know, storing those nuts. And then I wouldn't spend money on things that could make it easier, make my work life easier, my business life easier, my personal life easier. And on the outside, you might think, well, you didn't look like you were depriving yourself driving that BMW, Tiff. But I was of the bigger picture things. Remember, I was the person where it took me 5 years before I hired anybody to help me in my first business. So it was like the bigger investments. I was like, ooh, you know, I was so scared of spending that money. Well, I'm sure I picked that up from my father, right? Okay, next one, risk aversion. So growing up in a household where financial risk was discouraged, you can end up being so cautious with your investments and your career choices and even like starting a business, growing your business that you end up missing out on major opportunities. Also, me. So remember, if you listen to part one, you can have more than one of these imprints. I would like you, though, to narrow it down to two. Okay. But we'll get to that because if you think you're more than one already, if you're like, oh God, I really related to the feast or famine, but I'm also relating to the scarcity, well, then you might be anxiously abundant. So don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. I've got you. Hoarding and saving excessively. So if your family emphasize the importance of saving every penny, like save for a rainy day, we have to save. You never know what's going to happen. Like it's like the catastrophizing, like you need to make sure you save. Well, and saving is important. I'm not saying you don't save a certain amount, but there's a difference between an energy between saving and hoarding it. And it can prevent you from enjoying your money and having joy, because abundance is also having joy in spending your money and delighting in the things that this money has bought. And here's another subtle one for you. And I know he won't mind me sharing it. So, my ex fiance, Mike, his dad was very, very, I don't know if, I don't know. I don't feel it's fair for me to call him cheap. So I'm not going to, but let's just say frugal and definitely scarcity imprint situation. And it was just beaten in Mike's head. You have to take care of your things and they'll last for life. Like you have to take care of them. You don't want to have to buy another one. Now, granted, on the outside, that is an important lesson to teach children, right? To take good care of your shit. That's not bad. But when it's done in the energy of you have to, right? You have to, like, we can't waste this. You have to. Nothing can be wasted, No, you better eat all the food on your plate kind of a situation. It ends up having you devoid of joy or even feeling guilt when you spend money buying things. And a long time ago in a podcast, and I got his permission to share it, so I can share it again. When Mike went and bought his first Tesla, keep in mind, this motherfucker designs the interiors of them. Okay. He works for them. How much anguish he went through and how many years before he bought one for himself. And then he said to me, he felt like everyone was looking at him and judging him, and he felt really guilty driving it. And it took about 3 weeks. And me repeatedly saying, you deserve this. You deserve this. Like, I mean, think about that. He worked there and it still took years. And other people around him, most all the employees there were all buying them. And it came from that scarcity imprint. Like you should just be okay with the car you have. You should run that car into the ground. Well, if you need to do that because you're up against it financially, you're saving for something else, or you really love that old beater of a car, that's one thing. But if you're doing it to deprive yourself and you have the means and there's something else you want that makes you feel abundant, that is scarcity. So, anxiety about financial security. Experiencing financial instability in childhood can lead to ongoing anxiety about your financial future, regardless of your financial situation. So, the constant worry will drain the hell out of your energy and your mental health and cloud your decision making process. I mean, and the anxiety comes from scarcity, right? If you're in a scarcity, there's not enough, there won't be enough, there can't be enough. This was just a fluke. This is just a little bit. Da 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 da. Of course, it's going to put you in that spot. Limiting beliefs about success. If you grew up hearing that wealth is only for a certain type of person or that people like us don't get rich, you might internalize these limiting beliefs. Not you might. Okay. I shouldn't have put that. You will. This can result in self-sabotaging behaviors and a lack of confidence in your ability to achieve financial success. I'm going to give I hope you guys are liking the examples. Please give me feedback. You can DM me on Instagram at Project Me with Tiffany or at TikTok. It's probably better for you to DM me on Instagram though. And let me know if the examples are helping you. I pretty much think that they are. So I want to give you one. This one's kind of wild, but before I do that, I want to remind you to get my Make More Work Less course. So you can directly access that by swiping up. It's in the show notes. It's here in the description on YouTube, or go to projectmewithtiffany.com/make more work less. This will pay you back the whatever I'm charging for it. I don't even know. I'm charging way less than I should for it. But it is going to pay you back literally for the rest of your life, because the amount it's costing you to stay in these current childhood money imprints and how much it's cost you so far, it's costing you money every single day. It's costing you anguish. It's costing you anxiety. It's costing you your health. It's costing you opportunity. It's costing you creativity. And this is your next step answer. And this isn't some long, drawn out program. Okay. Just look at all of the reviews on that page. And then if you want more reviews because you're someone who has a scarcity imprint, you can go to the highlights in my Instagram and you'll see hundreds and hundreds of reviews of people who are like blown away. This changed my life. I've been in therapy for decades and nothing has cleared my money wounds like this. Okay. So enough said on that. So this example about even if you have money or even if you're stable financially, you might not have tens of millions of dollars, but like, you're doing well, but this constant worry, there's a lot at play here. You could have some financial entanglement going on with a parent. I see this a lot with clients and friends who were raised wealthy, who have at least one wealthy parent or even a grandparent that they know at some point they're likely set to inherit that money, or that's at least implied or said. And then there's this power dynamic with that parent or grandparent, like that I have all this money. I make more money than anyone in the family. That's my positioning. And you do not, and you must kiss the ring because this could go away. And it's so subconscious that some of you, when I'm saying this, are going, oh my God. And you're almost you almost learn to worry and have anxiety and insecurity around money because whether they've realized it or not, they basically made you feel like you're incapable of making what they make. They're the secure financial one. And if it's unhealthy, they kind of want you to be dependent on them for money. My mom wanted that for me. She got off on that. She wanted people to be dependent because that's how she felt maybe people wouldn't leave her or how she could control people. This shit runs deep. And yes, we go that deep inside my program. Okay. Next one, undervaluing yourself. Scarcity mindset with this imprint can lead you to undervalue your skills at work. You might struggle to negotiate a salary, raise your prices, assert your worth in professional settings, set boundaries. So this is going to lead obviously to lower income and slower career investment, even issues with growing your business, issues with clients. You are overperforming and under earning because you witnessed that growing up. You may have witnessed a parent have multiple jobs. You witnessed a parent doing the same thing and they just passed their childhood money imprint onto you innocently. You saw them. My mom, as dysfunctional as she is and toxic as she is, I don't think she intended to pass her childhood money imprint of you have to work your ass off to the bone if you want to be successful. 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, self-sacrificing. And so I picked that up from watching her do it and her say it because that was the primary parent I was around the most. So then I ended up doing that kind of work. So you overworking is a form of undervaluing, even if you are charging a lot of money. Even if you are getting paid a lot of money or you're in a high paying career, what are you having to do to earn that money? And that goes with the scarcity imprint. It's like, I have to do all these things. I have to sacrifice. I have to jump through hoops. I have to do a job I don't really like. I have to take clients I'm not really into. I have to run a company that doesn't light me up anymore because this is just what you have to do if you want to have money. Well, that's the opposite of abundance, isn't it? Guilt around wealth. If you were taught that having more than others is wrong or greedy, you might feel guilty about earning and accumulating wealth, kind of like what I said with Mike having the Tesla. This guilt can lead you to make poor financial decisions, such as giving away too much money or not pursuing higher paying opportunities, and even not delighting in the money you have, taking trips, sitting in first class, buying the actual model of car you like versus a few models lower. And that that guilt is like, I'm doing something wrong by having money. Like, rich people are gross, rich people are obnoxious. Oh, who do they think they are? And I know a lot of you grew up with that, where there was a lot of ridicule and judgment and critique placed on people who had success in your neighborhood, success of certain parents, like in the school you went to, success even by like pockets of types of people. I remember in college, shout out Emerson College, Emerson Mafia in Boston. And if you went to school in Boston, you'll know what I'm talking about. And there are a lot of internationals. Obviously, there's a shit ton of schools there, but there's a lot of international students and they have a lot of money. And it's not a appropriate phrase, but I am going to share what they are referred to as and what we did call them, which is not right. And but it is what it is. Okay. So they're referred to as like Euro trash. Now, I never felt comfortable with that term because I was like, well, they're not trashy, but I noticed a lot of people would call them that because they were living in penthouses, they were driving Mercedes when like we didn't even have cars in college in Boston. You walked everywhere and took they were eating, at fine dining restaurants, all that kind of stuff. And that amount of wealth made a lot of people, poor college students, people from different backgrounds, uncomfortable. And so then a label gets put on them, and not to say I don't think any of these college kids were doing that on purpose, but where do I think that came from? Well, that came from, the money imprint that they had growing up in childhood. That anyone who is showing wealth at that level, even if they're a lovely person, there's something wrong about being that bougie and that wealthy and that extra. And this is part of why in my brand, you see me, if you're watching right now on Project Me TV on YouTube, you need to go subscribe over there. I mean, there's lots of things you want to visually see that are going on, but I'll wear clothes and accessories with money prints on it. I have money art in my house. I do this to keep myself in the energy of money, but it's also a part of my brand to desensitize you around being rich. Being rich is a beautiful thing. Being abundant is a beautiful thing. It's not about, oh, I'm better than you, I'm showing off. Being abundant and celebrating the riches and delighting in life, why can't we have that? Where does it say? Let's say we can use the Bible as an example. Where does it say in the Bible that there's something wrong with making a lot of money? I mean, whether you believe in the Bible or not, it comes from when people feel like there's no way out of their current circumstances or situation, then they end up making fun of, they end up ridiculing and looking down upon the people that have what they want, right? Like I've dated guys before where they're like, "Oh, all you care about is money. You're just so money hungry." And it's like, first of all, I didn't ask your ass to pay one of my bills ever. But they were uncomfortable with my level of ambition for wanting to have financial independence and success. So then, I've also been called high maintenance. Again, I have never literally ever in my life expected a man to be like a sugar daddy to me. No, I mean, I'd be open to it. You want to buy me a Birkin? Sign me up. But I've never been that way. But because of them being uncomfortable with my level of financial standards and lifestyle standards for myself, because of their own childhood money imprint, right? They, instead of appreciating that about me, celebrating that about me, honoring that about me, they ridiculed me for it. I know this stuff is wild, right? Like when you unpack it, we start seeing our own shit. And it's not to beat ourselves up. A lot of this was just passed around generationally and it got passed down to you inadvertently and even innocently. And and now it's your responsibility to unpack it and to start looking at it and to stop some of this, right? Like I, I used to do a lot of critique and judgment around women's bodies when I was in the throes of my exercise addiction, because I felt like I couldn't look that certain type of way I wanted to look. And it was so hard and it felt so far away. And I had to sacrifice so much to even get my body to how it was then. And I still wanted more and it was never enough. And I was never thin enough. And so I would then, not to someone's face, but I would be judging. Oh, they probably never eat. They probably never go out and have a glass of wine. Da 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 da. Like I'd come up with all sorts of shit. And that's just a different imprint that I picked up in childhood being raised by an anorexic narcissist. Isn't that fun? And the last one here, difficulty trusting others with money. Experiencing financial scarcity can make you distrustful of others when it comes to money. This might manifest as a reluctance to delegate financial tasks, share financial responsibilities, or enter into financial partnerships. Yep. So, no joint bank account here, people. And it ain't ever happening. And I'm not joking. I've never done it. It's not happening, not approved by me. Period. End of story. Well, that's not surprising. And that's not that big of a deal, right? That's not affecting my abundance. I mean, my mom's on her 5th marriage. Okay. Pops, I think, had 4. And his last wife stole my entire inheritance from me. So it's kind of understandable, why I would be that way. And some of these things, right, aren't necessarily that important. But when you're saying difficulty trusting others with money, it could also be like I see parents who don't give their kids more financial responsibility. So there's some of that. Maybe you don't go and spend money to get help for yourself personally or in business, or you have a hard time with hiring employees or things like that, or even a nanny. It's like anything that involves money makes you uncomfortable. You assume at some point someone's going to steal from you. You're always concerned they're stealing from you. A lot of high profile athletes and celebrities go through this because the truth is when you do get to a certain amount of wealth, people do get heavy handed and you will have someone steal from you. I've had someone very close to me steal thousands and thousands of dollars from me. And it was absolutely devastating. But if you are in that constant looking over your shoulder, triple checking everything, waiting to see if someone's going to steal from you and let you down and screw you over, is that living in abundance? It's living in total paranoia, scarcity, exhausting. It makes you rigid, controlling, a pain in the ass to be around. It can make you a micromanager. It's not a cute look. And it's understandable when you've been burned before or you've witnessed people getting burned growing up, or maybe you grew up with a parent that kept a narrative going of never trust a man. I heard that one all the time. My mom was an entrepreneur and she would say, the second you're not looking, your employees will steal from you. Things like that. So I heard a lot of things over and over again. And quite frankly, I did watch growing up people taking liberties that worked for her, for sure. When you have enough employees, and guess what? I've taken liberties working for someone else. That's going to happen, right? But is it really worth your energy always being so worried of someone leaving you high and dry and screwing you, right? Like holding on to that mindset is you also holding on to scarcity. And then you end up with a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you really think someone's going to let you down and you have such a tight grip, you end up making people almost like, well, I might as well take money, or I might as well do this because she thinks I'm already doing it anyway. You end up creating it. It's like people who are so paranoid about being cheated on. At some point, you push that partner away. And I'm not saying cheating's okay, but you push them to the point of doing it, or you end up looking like you're a cheater because you're so paranoid. And it's like, if you're not paranoid, you must be cheating too. I've dated someone like that where they were like, so paranoid I was cheating. And then at some point I went, listen, that is not my jam and I'm not doing that. But the fact you keep bringing it up, now I'm suspicious that you're cheating. And now I don't trust you. It's like, that's what I mean by the self fulfilling prophecy. So curious on the scarcity imprint. Do you think that you're predominantly in this category? Then you have part 1, if you've not listened to it, which is feast or famine imprint. Part 3, the anxiously abundant imprint. And part 4 is the abundant imprint. So go check out Make More Work Less. I would grab it. You get lifetime access to this. You can use it over and over again. Don't just sit on this information. Information alone is not going to give you the transformation that you need that will change your life. It'll be interesting, it's helpful, it's kind of fun to noodle on, right? We all like being able to self-identify things, but if you don't actually take action to put it into practice, it's just going to stay as more information and you're not going to get the results. And I don't want that for you. So go do something for yourself today and have yourself a rich babe summer. Like you want to have a rich babe summer, this is where it starts. Seriously. I would prioritize this over you prioritizing doing something else in your business. Because really, if you've not done this work, you are actually working likely 10 times harder than you need to bring in whatever you're bringing in because of your childhood money imprint. And it's very hard, I know, to necessarily fully buy into that from me until you've experienced it. And that's why I'm encouraging you. Like, I mean, I have so many examples on this show, and there's so many testimonials and reviews. And at some point, you're going to actually have to be out of scarcity and actually trust that there is someone who gets it, who knows what's up, and that this is here and available to you. And I created it for a reason. Wishing you great health, wealth, and worth as always. Love you.